Your brain is an incredible machine, but it has sort of a design flaw. It can't tell the difference between a wild animal trying to kill you and a rude email you just got from your ex. To your nervous system, they are exactly the same thing. And that creates problems we have to figure out how to cope with.
But this is a stressful world we live in. How do I go about not being so stressed out? And that is a very reasonable question to ask. I think it starts by understanding that stress, that word by its very definition, is a response or a reaction to something that happens. And when I say something that happens, that means something in your environment that truly is distressing, or it can mean a distressing thought.
Here is the reality. You only have one stress system, and it's a blunt instrument. It responds to a text message exactly the same way it responds to a predator.
Meaning, it is just as likely to respond to a threat, like there being a wild dog in your neighborhood that you need to avoid, as it is to a really upsetting thought you have about that interaction you had with your boss or a colleague, and did you handle it well? Or that fight that you keep returning to that you had with your spouse, or worries about money. It's the same response where your body mobilizes a lot of cortisol, regardless of whether the stressor, the perceived threat, is real or it's something that you've just thought about. But still, by its definition, stress is a response or a reaction to a stressor, something that we may perceive as stressful, which means that stress is to a large degree under our control. Now, we know that the important factor seems to be how well people cope with stress, as opposed to how much stress they've actually faced in their lives. And that is one of the reasons why so many of us have become interested scientifically in resilience. And what is resilience? How can we be more resilient? Why are some people naturally more resilient than others? And there's a whole field of study around that. But what I'll say for now is that one important thing to do if you want to build resilience is to ask yourself whether it's appropriate to reframe a stressor as a challenge. Now, I am not saying that you should look at life through rose-colored glasses, because there really are some stressors, especially systemic or social ones, that are real, that we need to fight against and that need to be addressed. And that may be the case in your workplace as well. But there are many smaller stressors, even big stressors, frankly, that can be reframed as a challenge as opposed to something that's actually threatening. I'm going to go back to when I give professional talks again. I've been doing it for decades, but it's still stressful. I still get nervous. And that feeling of nerves in the body can impede performance. It really can impair it if you're not careful. You start to tremble, your heart beats, you start to sweat a little bit.
But here is the biological hack. Fear and excitement look almost identical to your body. Sweaty palms, fast heartbeat, that's energy. And if you choose to label it as energy or as excitement, it can work for you rather than against you.
So one of the tricks you can try is to reframe that stressful task or that stressful effort you're about to make as a challenge. You can even try to reframe it as excitement, because when you feel excited, the physiology is almost identical. Your heart beats fast, you sweat a little bit, you're getting ready, but the mentality, the mental frame you bring to it is all about how can I address this challenge as opposed to being afraid. So it's more of an approach, how can I face this challenge, as opposed to a withdrawal, how can I hide from it? That is also attached to this idea of growth mindset, which is all about taking something that was profoundly disappointing and stressful in its own way, but usually something that's already in the past. So if the challenge is a way to maybe frame something that you have to do in the future that you're afraid of, have a difficult conversation with a team member, talk to your kid about something that is going to be difficult for you to do, reframing it as a challenge can help. Now, if it's in the past, it's a little different. Both you can apply growth mindset to, but let's say it's in the past and you've failed, or you feel that you failed at something. You really didn't handle an interaction well, or you failed a test if you're trying to learn something, anything that you feel really deeply badly about that's in the past. Well, we don't have time machines. We can't get into them and travel back into time to change what happened. But what we can do is rather than do what most of us do naturally, which is to just beat yourself up for it and ruminate and think, why did I do that? Why did I do that? I should have done this. I should have done that. And just go over and over and over and over it again, which incidentally, after enough time, will really embed that negativity, that knowledge into your brain in a way you don't want it to be. It's better to then say to yourself, okay, I messed up. How can I grow from it? What might I do differently next time? Do you see the difference? So rather than berating yourself and feeling guilty and feeling bad and getting angry and reliving it over and over again and just embedding this memory, this layered memory now because you've thought about it so many times in the brain, which just enhances negativity too much, you change the frame by saying, how can I grow from it? How might I become a better person? How can I be a better leader next time? What might I do differently in the future? What does this teach me about myself? It's a much more generative way of looking at something bad that happened, especially if you're responsible for it. But you don't have to be responsible for it. If it's something bad that happened to you that you didn't have control over, a way of exerting control, and we know that perceived control helps a lot with the regulation of stress. A way to get some of that perceived control is to travel back in time and think about how you might have changed for the better because of it. And even in some of the most terrible circumstances, we do grow, we do learn, and we do change. If nothing else, we can help somebody else who's in a similar circumstance. So those types of mental frames are amazingly beneficial when it comes to rescripting memories that are in the past or rescripting our attitude to something that's upcoming in the future. But what all of this has in common, all of these manners of not being so stressed out, is in one way or the other engaging parts of the brain and nervous system that dial down the amygdala and help reduce stress physiologically.